Minnesota.
No, it's Iowa.
I know.
Yep.
Okay, welcome everyone to the May 1st iteration of the MicroProfile live Hangout. As is usual, it is the notes have been pasted. The link to the notes have been pasted to the chat, and it is everyone's responsibility to share the note-taking responsibility here. Thank you. All right, so let's see here. I need to bring up the notes. All right. So who wants to take a crack at leading the discussion around a review of the major and minor versions calls that we had over the last week or so? Any volunteers?
I'll start, but
All right.
I'm sure other people pipe in. So last week we held two different meetings in between our normal live Hangout meetings, and they were focused on trying to figure out the major and minor versioning of the component releases as well as the umbrella release. We took a lot of notes. Some of them overlapped. Some, I don't think there were any conflicting, but it was kind of a hodgepodge of minutes. Alistair went through the minutes and came up with a wiki page, and that link is in our minutes here. And so what I would recommend, I think, I'm looking at the people here, I think the people that are on this call today, most of them, well, I guess James, you might not have seen them, but most everybody else was participating in that discussion. So, but anyway, be sure to go out and review that wiki page, compare it to the minutes. There's a link in there back to the minutes. The biggest change that I did after Alistair first posted it is I went out there and updated it from that sub-spec wording to component version or component specification, because that's what we were using throughout, whenever we've been talking with MicroProfile, there's the components and then the umbrella release. And so I modified that. But other than that, I thought Alistair did a good job. I went through and compared, the item by item to make sure that things were covered, and I think it's pretty well covered, but, definitely needs another set of eyes to take a look.
Yeah, I took a look, and it looked pretty good. And I was pretty picky about some of those words, like making sure we addressed directly that we could use an older version of a specification in the umbrella spec, and all this stuff was maintained. So I thought it was all great job, and I was pretty impressed reading it. So
yeah, that he took all of that mess, and he missed one meeting too. And he took all of that and actually made it readable. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty good.
I was impressed.
Alistair, you're in a car right now. What did you think?
Although I'm not impressed now, driving in a Hangout, that's like a pretty bad idea.
Yeah.
Alistair, you are parked, correct?
No, don't ask him questions, because clearly he is driving.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, by the way, the meeting notes for the major and minor versions that we had are actually in the live Hangout notes. Right, so we didn't create a separate note-taking place. So for anyone that's interested, take a look at the live Hangout meeting notes. All right, are there? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I had said so. One comment I noticed, Emily, you had mentioned. Great that we agreed to use OSGI semantic versioning. We actually didn't.
I think it's for the package. For the package versioning, we use OSDS semantic versioning.
So the one difference that one thing we didn't get agreement on was that a subspec cannot update its version unless there are breaking changes. That's what OSGI semantic versioning enforces, that there cannot be a major version upgrade unless there are breaking changes.
I think that's for the a package. It's OSGI semantic versioning is a little bit more flexible on the bundle versions. So, and for the package version, we should comply with the OSGS semantic versioning. I mean, for the package level, obviously, that kind of you look at the API, SPI, Java classes. It's not to do with whether you increase the Java version or something else. All these dependencies.
Okay, I just want to call out that we left the meeting with a homework item to go all investigate semantic versioning. We didn't leave the meeting agreeing we're all going to semantic versioning. So I just want to make sure that we don't have a false lesson that we learned and walk out of the meeting and telling everybody you have to use OSGS semantic versioning, go read this document.
But at the moment, all the components back use the OSGS semantic versioning.
They use a versioning that's similar, but ultimately they should read the rules in the wiki and follow those rules. And if it's not written in the wiki, it's not a rule.
Actually, I disagree. We should define any package level versions. I mean, from this meeting, I think we should let OSGS semantic versioning rule to control the package level the semantic versioning, and we are talking about the component spec versions.
That's fine for an action item.
Yeah.
I think we need to discuss it. We should discuss it, but I just want to make sure we don't have a false understanding that we all agreed to use OSGS semantic.
Yeah, or that the rules that we came up with, how do you want to say it?
They stand alone.
Adhere. Yeah, we don't want to come across to like we understand semantic versioning and we're adhering to it when we really aren't.
Right.
Not completely.
Right.
So okay. So it's kind of not written down anywhere. However, I just speak from the reality. So that's fine to be rediscussed. But at the moment, in the component spec, we use the semantic versions. So you can go ahead to discuss again here. So that's fine.
I wouldn't say again. I mean, the rules listed in the wiki are the only rules.
Yes, but the rules didn't define what's a package version.
That's right. So that's why it's undefined.
Yeah. So I just okay, maybe I overuse we agree on things. That's my own perspective, and anyway, that's reality. So I'll be very uneasy if we just arbitrarily to do anything. So okay, what's the agenda then? So are we going to talk about the package level the version, or we are carry on to do the umbrella?
My recommendation is that we don't discuss that necessarily here. That we should continue the discussion either in a separate meeting, or we can have a thread in the Google group, right? Going down to the next level of semantic versioning and package level stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. So you can directly discuss the package version, or yeah. I'm keen to list some scenarios as well. Maybe we can discuss on the Google group.
Okay.
Tim, I would prefer for us to move to not only the new wiki, but also the conversation to a thread. We already had 3 hours last week on this matter. We have initiated a very important subject. Now it needs to go into writing. I do not agree that we should have another hangout.
That's what John was saying, and so that's a long way of saying you agree. But yep, I agree. We should just move on and shift it to the mailing list.
All right.
Alrighty. So now from a roadmap perspective, 1.4. So I just posted to the Google group kind of what you see here on the screen, in the notes. JWT 1.1, config 1.3, which completely breaks the versioning of everybody else because everybody else has all ones. Config 1.3, FT 1.1, metrics 1.1.1, and the REST client 1.1. this is based on the feedback that I've received in the Hangouts and the Google Threads, the Google Group Threads. So the next question is going to be about, candidate releases and all of that. We don't necessarily have to cover that here, but that is something that we can discuss in the Google Group thread. One other important point, and then I'm typing in here, is release date has been moved to June 6th. Partially to give people time to do a release candidate release, but also based on the review process of the Eclipse Foundation, it's the next pragmatic time for that to happen. So that's
So when do we have to be at the component spec level? When do we have to be done? What's our deadline?
At least I would, Kevin, help back me up here on some of the processes, but probably at least 2 weeks before the June 6th.
Can we write that down?
Well, yeah, it would have to be even before that, because in order to do the review with the Eclipse group, we have to get our PMC, the technology PMC, to sign off on the review, and that would include the contribution questionnaire that has to be done with all of our third-party dependencies and stuff. So all of the component releases would have to be complete in advance of doing those reviews. That's what we have determined over the previous releases of MicroProfile.
Right. So what's the date?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to explain what needs to be done.
Well, you're being called out.
So do we want to say the middle of May?
So
yeah,
I'm pulling up,
May 15th?
I'm pulling up the calendar here.
Maybe
it would have to be.
sorry, has to be or doesn't need to be.
So
Yeah, the 16th looks to be about right.
All right, let's do that. We just need a number in there so everyone can.
Yeah. So that the final release of each of the components would have to be ready by, I would say, May 16th at the latest.
But the 15th is the next hangout. Why don't we do it? Why don't we aim to have it on the 14th? So when we meet on the 15th, we can tackle whatever stuff is not been tackled. Having it on the 16th or 17th,
Sure.
Sure.
Whatever.
So
I don't have a preference. I just need us to have a date, or
14th.
so we can all steer to the same thing. Otherwise, we won't.
I think it's for the Substack gives more time. I think it's a less issue for anybody to come to this to the call to demo anything. I think 16th sounds fair, so that people can have a couple days catch up and etc. And then with that, you still have 1 week. Yeah, for the overall release. And considering we all component stack really big and trying to go through TCKs and etc. And then now it's only 2 weeks. I think May 16th is fair.
I disagree. I believe that 2 days do make a difference, and it makes us a little bit more disciplined. But guess what? Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to me either way.
Either way, I won't fight it because it doesn't really matter enough. I'm just saying the next hangout is on the 14th. And
Yeah, I only speak foolishly from myself.
That's all right. That's allowed.
All right, so
I have too many.
All right, so we'll leave it at the 16th, and move forward from there. I'll beg a little bit of forgiveness ahead of time, kind of being first time following these leading these Eclipse processes. So luckily we have Kevin here to help me out in the background. So we're trying to divide and conquer here on the responsibilities across releases. So maybe alternate or something like that. All right, Kevin, did you want to cover 2.0?
Yeah. So you know, now the logical question here that's come up after having the versioning discussion, and we've decided, okay, we're going to stick with the 2.0 as it's currently agreed to out in the Google group and the conversation that we've had here. But, you know, now it kind of comes up, okay, 1.4 has more content than what we had originally thought. So for 2.0, do I continue down that path because it would be a relatively easy release that I could probably still get done here in May, and then contain MicroProfile 1.3, or do we wait until 1.4 is done? I will say I'm a little hesitant on waiting for 1.4 just because we have moved it out several times. Now I know things are getting more firm, so maybe, you know, maybe this June 6th we will stick to, but I'm a little concerned about if that moves out again, then we're moving 2.0 out even further.
Well, here's the proposal. Do we want to eliminate 1.4 and make that 2.0?
That's one.
Such
I was
that
actually thinking the same.
What's that?
I was actually thinking the same, that given what's now in 1.4, given we're already pushing it to June, does it make sense to just bump the EE versions at the same time?
The only thing is, if we do like a direct escape 1.4 to push to 2.0, we need to make sure like all these the other spec be able to work with CDI 2.0. Like I know like some other specs, for example, like DWT and most of the specs will rely on CDI, and they were based on CDI 1.2. And if we do the CDI 2 release, I think we need to make sure all these specs can coexist with.
Yeah. But Emily, we would have done that anyway. I mean, no matter what the content, the MicroProfile 1.3 or 1.4. I mean, we're not, at this point, we're not asking any of these component specs to exploit Java EE8. Right. It's just to be able to update the base specification.
Yeah, that's true. However, I speak from my own experience, and some spec directly to just work with CDI, for instance, CDI 1.2, and they use the semantic versioning and exclude the CDI 2. So what I'm saying is, if we define this CDI 2.0, we just release the CDI 2.0, maybe we need to give more time to the component spec to make sure they work with the CDI 2.0.
Well, CDI 2.0 is compatible with 1.1.
Right.
There's not any backwards compatible changes, so I'm not sure what considerations are there.
The consideration is from the OSGI perspective, and for the for instance config, and it uses CDI. However, when you use Maven like a plugin directly generate the APIs, it's a kind of limit the API version range. So it only say 1.2 up to, but not include 2.0 for particular API packages. So that's we did some fix for config and to be able to make it work on CDI 2.0. So I'm pretty sure maybe some other spec has similar things.
We don't in JWT. I can confirm it's just plain old Maven versioning. There's no top range. Right.
Okay. So anyway, that's I hate this problem before. I just thought we need to, anyway, I think down the road we need to make sure announce this one. If we delete, if we skip 1.4 directly go to 2.0, we need to make sure like the JAX RS2.0 and all these Java EE technologies are able to work with current content of the 1.4. Maybe it's the other way around. The current 1.4 work with the Java EE8.
Well, and so let me get some perspectives. Kevin, can you mention your thoughts? I mean, so someone like Ken and I like the idea, but we haven't heard too many other people chime in. So
Yeah. So my hesitation with that is then if we don't do a 1.4, then all of these updates that we're talking about would not work with the Java EE7 base. Or are you saying that we would do both a 1.4 and 2.0?
I just kind of threw out the concept of maybe merging them, and then as you state, that would mean they don't necessarily work with.
Right. We'd be specifying a new minimum.
Yeah, and that, to be honest, that's going to happen to us.
At some point.
Yeah, exactly. So the subspecs can maintain their language that their minimum version is, I don't know that even works, but yeah, it's going to happen at some point.
So
That's what makes the 2.0 a little bit awkward.
So I'm going to insert another perspective, an additional perspective, and that is this opens the door for breaking changes or, potentially additions of other specs that might be in the works. Is there any interest around those two things?
No.
I just thought I would ask the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's ready yet, so.
Yeah, I think actually I like the idea to just release 2.0, and even if somebody like as David or Kevin said earlier, like if the components back want to maintain their back level, and then you can directly lift out one individual spec to use like Java 7 EE7 spec. The other thing is what I'm thinking, with the only release 2.0, and this will kind of allow the component spec to do them like backward incompatible changes as well, such as maybe metrics.
Well, no, that would go against our rules that we've been talking about.
Where's it go against the rules? Because they do a major release, and then like this is the umbrella release and major version jump.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood you, but the only way that metrics could move up to 2.0 is if the umbrella release would also go up in value.
No, the umbrella release go from 1.3 to 2.0.
Right, but okay, but now you're changing the direction of 2.0 because we've had the discussion out in the Google group that we're going to make this a very simple upgrade for existing customers, just to update the base Java EE specs.
Maybe it needs to rediscuss, I think.
Oh boy.
So it's all written down,
Part
right?
of the problem. This is part of the problem. Why I'm concerned about rebasing 2.0 on 1.4, because then we just keep moving stuff out and out and out. And so far we've missed first quarter, and if we don't watch it, we're going to miss second quarter here pretty quick.
Yeah. So what's our goal? What's our deadline for 2.0? What's our intended date?
I have it as May 18th because I could still get that ready for the review with Eclipse by the 16th.
So either way, we would either be doing 1.4 and 2.0 at the same time.
This is ridiculous, you guys. PR wise, marketing wise, you guys are throwing stuff and not. We are deciding.
Let me finish my thoughts.
Let me do this way.
All right.
Two releases at the same time. We are going back to December, throwing one release when no one will appreciate it. When we talk about clients, we're talking about users, so let's use users instead of clients. Again, two releases is a waste of time. Why are we here again?
Okay, now that's a very.
Why are we cooking the same stuff?
That's a pretty strong perspective, but
it is strong.
So I was simply attempting to clarify. We would basically be doing both releases at the same time, and potentially even a 1.4 after the 2.0.
Yes.
Do we think that that's ideal?
No.
Well, Amelia, I mean, one thing we're not, these are establishing two different bases of Java EE. So I don't know. It doesn't seem as bad. It's like we're creating a new new platform. You know, there's one for Java EE7, there's one for Java EE8.
Yeah, I mean,
I know it's a tough call, but I guess from my perspective, I'd be concerned that if we did both and they came out within a couple of weeks of each other, that we're basically saying you can either choose to use Java EE8 and older MicroProfile or use Java EE7 and newer MicroProfile. So it's like a lose-lose.
yeah, I do think having them both so close together is going to confuse developers. It doesn't matter. It may not even matter what the order is. I don't know. But having them so close together might confuse developers.
Plus, I mean, the fact that 1.3 is part of 2.0, and there's another 1.4.
Well, that
That would change.
That's
that's
confusing
what
too.
started the whole discussion.
It's too messy.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I
So-
do agree with the too close together. So
Okay, so would it make, okay, I'll throw this out as an alternate idea. Would it make sense to just push forward with 2.0 and 1.4 gets moved into the next quarter?
But it's an idea.
or do we need to keep making 1X releases after we make our first 2.0?
I was just saying, do we push 2.0 and then 1.4 becomes 2.1?
Now there's an idea, Ken.
Mhm.
That could definitely work.
Yeah.
so
I mean, although I will say, if 1.4 becomes 2.1, that is semantically the same as just putting 1.4 and 2.0 together, because they have a release date that's maybe days apart.
No, I think
I would say pushing 2.1 until like
Yes.
another couple of months. I wouldn't
Yeah.
keep the current schedule.
into July even.
Go to one time frame.
actually, it's, I think this discussion is about whether we want to maintain the Java EE7 or we just directly jump to Java EE8 and from now on only Java EE8.
That complies with Jakarta E. However, we will disown those users in Java 7 that are still. It's just like it seems to me that we could use Ken's idea and still not drop Java EE7 just from the perspective of the users. You know, we don't want to.
Maybe I can make a simple comment from a JDBT perspective. I think we're ready. So I think we would want to be in the next release, whatever it is. Get our specs written, our TCKs up to speed. I think we're just looking at a release candidate, and we're good to go, right?
Good.
You know, so.
Well,
A lot of the aspects are in a similar boat, so maybe it is need to keep 1.4 and push 2.0.
Say that.
Because a lot of specs in 1 are getting close to their release candidates being final anyway, that maybe we just keep 1.4 and push 2.0 later.
Well, or we don't like, you know, I don't think our options are only push 2.0 or push 1.4 to a 2.1. Like I say, we could just smush them all together, have one release announcement. That's MicroProfile 2.0, Java EE8 has some config updates, has metrics updates, and REST client change and config change. And that would be a good press release.
Yeah,
Really good. It's strong too.
I actually I like this idea. And then I would even advocate we do the 2.x release instead of doing any 1.x release. We discussed this a long time in the past. I think whether we want to return 1.x parallel with 2.x. Maybe this is
And then the last one is merge 1.0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the idea of merging. I think it boils down to whether that's possible as to whether the sub-specs can verify that they work okay on EE8 tech. Now, for most of them, it's probably an easy case of just bumping the versions and running the TCK against an info, and it'll work or it won't. But obviously for config, that sounds more complicated.
But config already been fixed. It works with the CDI.
So I want to bring this up though. Are we alienating the Java EE7 users?
Well, that's potentially the case, right? So,
I don't think it's a good idea.
hold on. Do we want to? Well, so here after merge 1.4 and 2.0, there's a flavor of that one, which could be that we release 2.0 and 1.4 basically at the same time in the same press release. That 1.4 maintains Java EE7 alignment, and the 2.0 basically says all the same stuff in 1.4, but now going forward, it's going to be Java EE8. We don't stagger them out days apart. We just clock them in the same time, right? You know, they're both streams are released. The EE7 stuff gets out, and we could announce that basically that's our last planned 1X release, and 2.0 is also released, and all future work is going to be there. That's you know, just in thinking in terms of our ability to describe to the world what we're doing.
And have a consistent story.
Right, and have a consistent story. If they come days apart, it only raises questions.
Correct.
If they're at the same
The
time,
change there is that 2.0 would include 1.4 instead of 1.3 content.
right. I think no matter what, 2.0 has to include the 1.4 content, or it just feels weird to me.
So,
And everybody seems to be feeling like they're ready, or at least from the specs that I know, at least we feel pretty confident.
so
I would like to add on this, like having if we want to do the two releases on the same day, that's better. I believe that we should have one blog in the start of the blog and have these people, like not the individual, but this group say, you know, on behalf of MicroProfile, like not a single writer, but MicroProfile community or whatever you call it, and have it really well explained, the two releases into one. I don't really care what every vendor writes on their own blogs, but this blog should go into MicroProfile.io, written as a community blog. I think we have done a poor job on this. And the explanation here is we have worked super hard on this kind of things. Explaining it, one of us cannot do a good job, but together.
Okay, it's off topic because we haven't decided what we're going to be doing yet. So that's a new option. So let's go around the room. Who likes the idea of releasing them both? We don't have to make any compromises with that.
Before you ask for vote, can I ask something? To move forward, like in the third quarter. So what kind of release are we going to do? Are we going to do 1.5 and 2.1 at the same time again?
No. We've written down on the paper that 1.4 would be marked as the last Java EE7 release.
Oh, okay. This is a kind of and then
it would be a shift, right?
Okay, in this case, I'm happy. I don't like maintaining the two releases. I think it's a.
Can we write down that you're happy so that way in the next meeting, that when you say you don't like these rules, we can remind you that you were happy at
How do you
one
spell
point?
aesthetic?
You can only say at least it's 1937.
So I'd like to. One of the things that's slightly concerning me with this discussion is that we keep talking about the umbrella spec as if it's supposed to be dictating the Java EE versions, but when we had the discussion about the versioning guidelines, we essentially said that should be driven by the component spec. And I know that MicroProfile 2.0 is kind of different from that perspective, but it just worries me that we're thinking and discussing this from the perspective of the umbrella spec first, and we should be transitioning into the component specs really being the drivers.
Right. I 100% agree on the sentiment, although we did discuss last meeting that the 2.0 would be the one exception, and after that, we would shift to the mode that you're talking about.
Right, but the reason it comes up is you're saying there won't be a future, there won't be a future MicroProfile 1.x stream, and that the conversation about having multiple version streams, well, that's not really an umbrella specification consideration. That's supposed to be component spec driven.
Okay.
That's the point I'm making.
Well, no, I think what we're saying is that the umbrella level 1.4 would be the last 1x release. That doesn't mean it's the last 1x release of a subspec. If they want to continue updating with minor versions or whatever, they're more than welcome to do so if they have the resources to maintain multiple branches.
Yeah, one of the things we did discuss as well along those lines is that the umbrella spec decides which subspecs or component specs it decides to include, right? So it kind of can choose, if I recall correctly, that was one of the guidelines.
Yes, that is one. That is something we said.
Okay, I mean, so the only thing that I would say would affect what's written down would be if all the subspecs surprised us and they wanted to maintain 2 streams for EE7 and 1 for EE8, and then we would be looking at a situation where why don't we do a 1.5 release?
Yep.
Because all the subspecs have put in so much work into making sure Java EE7 stays on the table. We should respect that, and we should do a 1.5 release. I kind of don't think that will happen, but maybe it will. So
I mean, I think that's pretty sensible because there's a lot of Java EE7 out there, right? And it's gonna take time until everybody moves to Java EE8.
Sure. And so what I would say is we would just maybe finesse that wording on the 1.4 is marked as the last Java EE7 release to be. That is
it's the last intended
we don't
release.
anticipate our last anticipated or something like that. There's a softer word.
Yep.
Maybe we can say unless someone requests for another umbrella release for the 1.x.
We just simply need to say that we anticipate work shifting to 2.0,
Right.
but or something of that nature, so people can understand where they just need to know more or less what we think will happen while we're communicating clearly something else could happen.
Because the users.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's a fine balance to strike. So that's what I say. Anticipated could be.
I like that word. This is what I say. Writing.
We could simply say it's anticipated the subspecs will switch to EE8, and this may be in this. Yeah, it's a press release. It's a press release wording that, but can someone think of any better words than anticipated?
No.
I like that.
So with this e-writing, and if I'm working on the component spec or sub spec, from now on, once the 1.4 is being released, I could take the liberty to directly rely on the Java EE8 stuff, and then I kind of drop the dependency on the CDI 1.2 and directly work with CDI 2.0, and then for example config, now I work with both CDI 1.2 and CDI 2.0, and then it's after 1.4 release I say okay, I only want to work with CDI 2.0, and then at this point in time I have to upgrade my config from 1.3 to config 2.0. Once I bump my version to 2.0, so I will have to request MicroProfiles 3.0 release.
We covered this use case already, and if it's not in the wiki, then we should update the wiki so that it's clarified.
It is in the wiki.
Okay. Because we definitely covered it in the minutes, and We definitely covered it in the meeting. I don't know if we wrote it in the minutes, but
I did definitely write it up on the wiki. It's not in the versioning area. It's in the third section, which talks about kind of rules of engagement, which is a component spec can recommend deletion, make a recommendation to the umbrella spec, but it's the umbrella spec that makes the decision.
Right. The actual comment though was we covered the scenario where the minimum version on the umbrella goes from Java EE7 to Java EE8 / Jakarta EE8, and then a subspec updates its major version later from EE7 to 8. That does not require the umbrella spec to yet again update the major version because that change is already accounted for.
Yep,
Right.
and that's in there.
Okay, so probably it's different from what I'm reading. Okay.
That's the exception clause, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Can I say something? In this case, like in the MicroProfile 2.0, right? I have config 103 included, and then in MicroProfile 2.1, I have config 2.0 included. Is this? Is this acceptable?
It depends. What is in your 2.0 config? Did you make so if you made a breaking change just from the upgrade of the Java version, that change is going to be accounted for in the umbrella. If you're saying that you made a breaking change in the config API that people will have to recompile their config API because you removed a class or something like that, or you changed the method signature so people's code won't work, then we would have that uncomfortable situation where we couldn't put you in the 2.1 umbrella release because you broke yourself between umbrella 2.0 and umbrella 2.1. So
okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, she's happy again.
Write it down, quick, write it down.
So is there going to be enough time for the subspecs to do any kind of testing or final work to make their spec ready for 2.0 for the Java EE8 stuff? Because this is the winner.
I believe
both going to get released on the same day.
I believe that is reasonable because quite honestly, we've been operating under the assumption already that it is compatible with EE8. Right. We haven't put any warnings out to the world saying, don't try this on EE8.
Okay.
I want to hear from James. James is super quiet today. Clearly, he might not have catch up yet with the 2 calls last week. James, what's up?
I don't really have much of an opinion. I'm happy to leave you guys. There seems to be enough opinions and enough well thought out things. I don't think another one is needed here.
I was going to pose the same question.
James would be like, I want to call it A, B, and C. Forget numbers.
No, James is going to say, I want nothing to do with this so I can point the finger when this all gets... I'm just kidding.
That works well for me too.
Touche. All right. So we seem to have an approach. Now we got to rethink the time, potentially rethink the timing here. It's still going to take time for the component specs to deliver release candidates, right? Are we still looking by combining these at the same date being June 6th?
See, I don't think it'll be, I don't know, maybe I'm simplifying it too much, but because of what, David just reiterated again, that we have never identified that we were limited to the Java EE7 versions for all these component specs. So combining them with the new versions of Java EE8, it should be okay.
Be fine with me.
So June 6th?
Yes. Do we, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that date.
And I really mean it seriously to start a draft where everyone in this call, including you, James, you can just suggest comments and things. Let's just start writing that together. Not as an author, but as a community, because
Yeah, we already got that.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, it doesn't give ownership. It just says collaborative blog.
Yeah. Let's just make sure right down in the minutes that all these notes are from James, and we all agree.
Let's go James under the bus. If you want in a call, ask me anything goes.
He was kind of pushy, but he got us all convinced.
James, so you're
And we're good to go. But if it becomes hairy in the future, we're all going to back away from this decision, and then James will be left holding this by himself.
I'm only okay with that if you rename MicroProfile to James Profile.
How about we name it to Micro James?
And allow me, John is also here. He has spoken in other calls, but today he's really quiet. I am calling out your users of the microprofilers that are quiet. Why is that? Don?
What?
Don is here also.
Oh,
yeah.
Don. I thought you said John. I was like, I haven't been quiet. Okay.
So, Don, I am calling two quiet microprofilers in this call.
So I'm following along. I mean, I think to us, the implication of this whole thing is that for metrics, it's since we're not really dependent on a particular JEE spec, that in theory, we could just keep doing 1.x's until we either need to make a breaking change or we need to be dependent in some way on JEE 8, right? So in theory, we don't actually even need to choose sides between JEE 7 and JEE 8 until we break something.
Right. And then the consideration would be that, of course, there is a planned breaking change for metrics, and so you
then we're on the 3.0 train.
Right. Or yeah, you're on the 3.0 train, or you're just simply not in the 2.0 train, or platforms who are 2.0 compliant would have to work out some way to ship you in a way that they're still 2.0 compliant by default, which I believe you can handle in Liberty, right? I think you had discussed some.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point. I mean, some runtimes will let you mix and match these specs together, and I guess that's fair game.
Now, does this imply that we have to update all of the TCKs to also test against Java EE8, like a Java EE8 implementation?
Sure, and implementation would need to for the 2.0 release.
Yeah, I'm speaking specifically to the TCK. Yeah, so it sounds like there's going to have to be, a bit more work done to test against 1.7 and 1.8. Sorry, EE7 and EE8.
Yeah, boy, you really went backwards there.
Yes, I did. Apologies.
On a wiki, I remember.
Yeah. For the TCKs, for the TCKs, for example, for the fault tolerance, they are in both packages, both umbrella releases. Need to make sure it work with E7 and E8, especially CDI 2.0 and CDI 1.2 and JAX RS.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the implication there would be that if you're a vendor and you have an EE8 platform and an EE7 platform, you would simply need to run the TCK twice.
Okay, I have another question.
That's a simpler way of saying it, but that's, that I don't, a lot of these subspecs don't have any direct dependencies on EE things like metrics. So obviously, you as a vendor, if you want to release something that's 1.4 compliant, you should test it on your 1.7 platform. And if you want to claim 2.0 compliance, you should run that against your EE8 platform. That's really work for the vendors, not necessarily work for the subspecs.
Yeah. I have another question on this kind of versioning stuff. we talk about all the dependencies on another, spec, and the dependencies is that include both the optional dependency and mandatory dependency, or we only consider the mandatory dependency?
The required, the mandatory dependencies, that's what will affect your versioning and the combination with other component specs.
It was
So
not.
I would say if you have an optional dependency, and it's on, say, one version of a Java spec or another version of the component spec, and you update it so you no longer optionally support that release stream, but you require the 2.0, that would be. I think you can easily, if you don't want to do that, you could easily write it to say, in the presence of, say, MicroProfile config 2.0, do X. In the presence of MicroProfile 1.x, do X. So I think you can write a spec that doesn't drop one, but I think if you update a version from, and it's optional from one to another, you're essentially dropping a version. So I think we have a rule for that.
I think we discussed that briefly last time, but I don't think we captured it in our minutes.
No.
And in your description, you used X twice, by the way. So
I know. Sorry.
None of those should have been a Y, but or some other letter. Anyway, but yeah, I would agree. If you have an optional part of your specification, and any part of your specification, if it drops support for a prior version, that's a breaking change. But yes, you can have an additional functionality which works on a future version, and that's okay. So having additional functionality that works on a future version, in the presence of that version, additional features which are enabled, that's fine. But as you state, if at any moment that additional functionality changes its support level, that's still just a breaking change in the component spec itself.
Yes, theoretically, the client will not directly broken, but the behavior will be changed. I'm happy to treat the optional dependency same as mandatory dependency. I think to be consistent, and then to make sure the end user won't get unexpected behavior.
Yeah, treating an optional dependency as a mandatory dependency from the perspective of changing the minimum requirement.
Yeah.
Dependency requirements.
Yeah.
Simply saying that it does not exist in the current specification, but can work in a future specification, that does not make a breaking change.
Yeah, I understand that. So
I think we would want to capture that in our notes, in our wiki.
I will update the wiki where it says including optional and mandatory.
So the one thing that when I reviewed the notes and the wiki, one thing that we didn't do, we only defined when we're having a breaking change. Some of the statements that we made in the minutes where we discussed the whole thing and then we said, nope, that's not a breaking change. We didn't put that into the wiki.
We should do that. You're correct. We should have the use cases there that we discussed. I mean, the intent of some of these lines were to point out these use cases, but you're right. We should just really have a list of use cases and say this does not constitute a breaking change. This does constitute a breaking change.
And I tried. I was trying to do that on the kind of the very bottom of the page because it's got some examples, but I don't think it's exhaustive.
Right. I think that there's a limit to how abstract we can make the use cases to the point that they can be written down as rules, and maybe we should just have a use cases section.
It's not. It needs to be there as examples.
Right. Well, let's not cut people off. So Kevin was talking.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, I think I was almost going to say the same thing. I think we ought to be focusing on that example section
Yeah.
And we can talk about the scenarios, because I don't want to identify rules that say this is not a breaking change, because it's like it just doesn't sit right. I like it where we have rules. These are, well, I guess we don't identify breaking changes. We identify the version update.
Right.
And so we identify the rules that constitute a component version update or an umbrella version update. Then in the example section, if we talk about the scenarios that, if you want to call them edge cases or whatever, but
Sure.
scenarios that do not result in a version update, that's fine. Put them down
Right.
in the example section.
I think that that's wise, and I think that in the future, when someone brings up a question or a use case that isn't covered, that and the discussion happens, the mandatory outcome is that that use case must be added to the wiki, so we don't have to have the conversation again.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Even if we felt the rules don't need to be changed, the use case was unclear, and so therefore the ruling needs to be in there, right? So
Mhm.
it's, there's not all court cases make the laws change. Usually they don't, but the precedence is important.
Yeah, that is the most practical way to document stuff in the most efficient way without.
Yep.
Yeah, I do agree. I think we need to build more examples or question and answers. Like, what if I change like this API, and what shall I do? And then answer. Okay, you change the like major version, and then you kind of which MicroProfile umbrella release you should target for. I think this is really, really good.
We're out of time in this meeting, but
Yes.
can we write down at least the two use cases which I remember coming up? One is that the umbrella spec moves to Java Jacquard EE8, Java EE8, and in a future version, a component spec moves to EE8 and changes its major version. This does not constitute a breaking change from the umbrella's perspective, and therefore no
Okay.
umbrella change
That
will
is
be made.
You're gonna have to type
that
it.
is specifically covered.
Can't keep.
Hey, why are you doing it?
That one's specifically covered.
Yep.
Okay.
Don't. Bail, type it.
No, it's just my brain in my I can either type or I can speak.
Type.
Right.
Both, right? And so it's kind of a team effort.
Oh,
Right.
when you say it's covered, so it's in a scenario
Yeah, we
14 something.
right. So what was the second use case that you wanted to get covered?
Well, it just came up and it escaped me and told me to type.
Is
So
that the one that Emily?
The optional dependencies.
that was it.
That was it.
Yeah. So if a subspec has an optional dependency that does not that it's a feature that doesn't work in the current version, only works in the presence of a future version, of a future minimum requirement, right? It's enabled only by the presence of a future of a higher minimum version, right? That's not a breaking change. That's allowed.
Anything we say.
Okay.
When I.
But
last time,
let's
Yeah.
so John,
That is allowed. Let's see if I got this right. The component spec has an optional dependency that has a feature that only works with a future umbrella spec version. That's allowed. Oh, that is not a breaking change. Not a breaking change.
right. So basically the feature can't be enabled unless you're on a future version, right?
That feature is only enabled on a.
Doesn't that mean though that sub-spec should also be part of that future umbrella?
Okay. So
Maybe.
now
That's the umbrella specs determination.
right. The next bullet though is if that optional feature drops support, it's treated drops support for its whatever its minimum version is. It is treated just like a minimum version in the component spec in general, and that is a break and change.
is this part of the transitive Okay, I remember last time I dropped just when we started that part.
Right.
It will break.
I don't think.
So
I don't think I captured this properly.
Yeah. Anyway,
Change this minimum version. Yeah, that's fine. It doesn't sub bullet or not. It doesn't actually matter. But basically, the statement being made is that just because something is optional doesn't mean you get to be free from the rules.
Yeah. So basically, we treat the optional and the mandatory dependencies the same.
If your optional thing changes its minimum requirements, it's subject to the same breakage rules.
Yeah.
So
May I suggest that we add over time, and this is important.
Well,
we suggest that you go and write it up, and then for this team to review it. You are saying some things, and it's so cool, but the call is complete, and I'm going to hang up right now.
Okay.
But
you're not dialed in.
Yeah, I would hang up right now. But you should be John write this out, not only time.
Protect your keyboard.
Feedback for David, guys.
Yes.
Love seeing everyone.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Amelia.
Okay.
Bye.
Right. As long as we have the idea captured, we're good. We can fill out the use case in the wiki.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I have time, I will come up with more examples, and then and then we can all update answer them.
Yeah.
And then we can agree on the wiki.
Yeah. Ideally, our use cases would have an actual example of a feature, right? So it'd be like, if you're on JAX-RS 2.0, you can use these web client features, but they're not mandatory for the spec to work. So that's an optional feature for Java EE8, but does not affect, REST client 1.0 or whatever. We'd have to come up with some specific examples, but.
All right.
At least they're capturing them.
Yeah, we got them captured. I'm gonna begin closing up the call here. So thanks everyone for attending. The next meeting is May 15th, and the next scheduled meeting is May 15th. See you then next same bat time, same bat channel.
Okay, thanks, John.
All right, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.